Informative and persuasive speeches are what I would like to talk to you about today. So both of these are really important to know about because there's something you can do on almost your day-to-day life, whether consciously or subconsciously, in an informal or formal setting. You're going to use these forever with whether you realize it or not. This could be done in your workplace, a business setting, or even with friends and family in your day-to-day life. So knowing what both of these consist of is important so you know how to use them successfully and choose which one is right for you. So first, let's look at informative. So what is the overall purpose of informative? It is to inform people of something new, something they've never heard of before. So it can be any new idea, fact, or belief that has come out that you want to tell people about. So anyone like a teacher, family member, friend, boss, leader, supervisor, these are people who are going to surround you, who are going to be doing it on a continual basis, whether you realize it or not. They're going to be mentoring you and influencing you, and it's a continual stream of information that's going to come from them, whether in a presentation or speech or just in a conversation day to day. So the first thing we want to look at is start with a purpose. So why are you trying to inform people? You might think to yourself, I want to inform blank, blank, blank. So an example, I want to inform the new employees of the new implementation of Plax time. I want to inform my boss of this new policy. I want to do what? Take that, and then you're going to incorporate that in your thesis statement. So with your thesis statement, you are able to portray what you want to the audience. So you're going to state that in the beginning, and then that's going to really let them know, okay, this is what I should expect from your presentation. Then you're going to hit on your thesis statement again in the middle with each of your points. Make sure it all connects back to that, and then your conclusion. Because everything you're talking about should ultimately revolve around your thesis statement. Next, choosing an organizational pattern that's right for you. So you have linear and you have configural. So with both of these, you need to decide which one makes sense for the facts, data, whatever have you that you're presenting. So linear, this is the most common type used, and that makes people more comfortable with it. So linear, you think of straight line. So you start at the beginning with your thesis, talk on your middle points, then you have your conclusion. With linear, it's a nice straight path, and you're going to hit on each point individually and really dive into those. Configural is a lot different than this, and it's a newer idea. So configural doesn't really lay it out for you like that. It allows for you to be more creative and to jump around a little more. This is something that can actually be better used in a business setting because you leave more to the audience to decide what the purpose of the presentation is. Linear can actually be seen as almost too childish or insulting in a way because you're holding their hand too much. You're giving them too much information, things they might already know and they don't need to hear again. So that's why sometimes configural is better for a more business-like formal presentation where the audience members are already going to be very knowledgeable on what you're presenting. And then last, we need to use supporting material, which might seem a little weird to have to mention, but the whole purpose of informing is to present new data, new ideas, topics, beliefs, whatever. So people need to know that you didn't just make this up. If you want it to really stick, for them to believe you, to have credibility, you have to say this, this, and this, and then say here's the proof. So this can be a lot of different things. Data, statistics, personal experiences, videos, photos, any type of actual example is going to be great for supporting material. So continuing on with informative, you want to compel your audience and you want to help them retain and remember everything you've said. So these go hand in hand. So how are you going to compel your audience? So you really want to grab their attention to make sure they're actually hearing you out, hearing what you have to say. So this is kind of your style. How are you going to present it to them? So you can use things like humor, emotional appeal, stories, and then repetition is a good one. Using any of those, one or a combination, that's really going to grab their attention and make them actually hear you out and what you have to say. So then, how are you going to help them remember? So you really want to keep it simple and keep it concrete. You don't want to overwhelm or confuse anyone ever if you're informing. So keeping it simple and using plain language. There's no need to make it overly fancy and long-winded. Less is better, easier for people to remember, to really make it stick. Then you want to be repetitive again. So sometimes it's not a bad idea to sound like a broken record. If it's really important and you really want people to get the point, you start with your thesis statement, let them know what it's all about, and every time you start a new topic, really connecting it back to that thesis statement. Lastly, we want to use familiar examples. So this kind of goes back with compelling your audience. If you're using personal stories or examples, make sure they're relevant. It can be hard to connect with the audience and really grab their attention and make it stick, make them learn if to them they have no idea what you're talking about or your example is completely irrelevant to them. So really trying to use things that fit the situation. So some examples of what an informative speech could be would be a how-to speech. So laying it out step by step. So saying, here is all the information on how you would go about doing this. Next, we could have an employee orientation. So these are new hires. They've never been with the company. So you're going to lay out what to expect, what their job duties are, and what's expected of them. And just informing them of all of that. And then history report could be something if you are giving a presentation in a college class. Maybe you do a presentation on a president. You would do an overview of all the facts and data about that president and his lifetime. So now we'll move on to persuasive. So persuasive and informative really go hand in hand. You can give an informative, informational presentation without trying to persuade, but you really can't give a persuasive without informing first. So that's really step one, is everything we just covered. So you're going to lay out the facts, tell them what it is, and then that's where persuading comes in. So now they know all of that information, and now you're trying to influence or create change. And now you're going to persuade them. So step one, you decide what your purpose is. So you're going to choose, do you want to influence attitude, behaviors, or beliefs? 1, 2, all 3 of those, whatever your purpose is. Again, you want to tie this back into your thesis statement. So you're going to say, I want to enact this change or this behavior on my audience, and then this is my goal. Make that thesis statement. Now you have a vision for the rest of your speech. So an outline, in a sense. Next, you want to choose your organizational pattern again. just like informative, you need to have a structure for where you're going, so you don't just get up and just talk without being prepared. So there's really only a couple for this, and they're pretty similar. So you have problem versus solution, and cause and effect. So basically you're going to say, here's all the facts, here's the information, and then this is what I think the solution is to that problem. Or here's what is happening now, how's that going to affect us? So you state your information, state how it should be changed, or how that's going to affect people. So with persuasive, the biggest thing here is really going to be assessing your audience. So before you dive headfirst into trying to convince an entire crowd of people to do something, you want to know where you stand with them and what type of people they're going to be. So psychological resistance is your natural tendency to resist change. So people tend to be stubborn, they tend to rebel kind of when you try to enact or persuade change within them. So first, you really want to find a common ground with people, try to persuade them. Once you find that common ground, that is going to show them that you respect them. So you want to build and establish trust first, and then you can try to drive home your point. Next, how are we going to influence people? So we have to have a game plan. We can't just get up and talk. So you've made the outline, you know your purpose, you've assessed your audience, you know how they might react to you, and now you're going to figure out exactly what method you're going to use. So things to keep in mind are: 1, conceal your intent. You don't want to lie or anything like that, but you want to be careful in your phrasing. You want to be conscious of how you word things and how they appear to the audience. Sometimes being blunt might not be the best way to go. So next, you want to avoid inflammatory phrases. So with concealing your intent, being careful of your phrasing, again, to avoid things that might upset people. Anything that's might not be a safe phrase, something to say, it's best to just avoid it at all. Because once people become upset or insulted, it becomes much, much more difficult to persuade them to your opinion or the belief that you're trying to show them. So we also want to use a two-sided message with a refute. That's been proven to be the most successful. You're going to lay out your opinion, the opposing opinion, and then you're going to refute why that's not right and that the first one was. And then we don't want to ask for too much, really. Try to be happy with small changes when you give a persuasive presentation. It's unlikely that you'll persuade the entire audience to make every single change you set out to have, or all the big changes. Shoot for just enacting small change with each presentation you give. With people's natural born resistance against change, it's highly unlikely that you will have everything accomplished that you set out for. So some examples of a persuasive speech could be a presidential campaign or a motivational speaker. Presidential campaign is, I think, the best example. So they're going to lay out their beliefs, their ideas. This is what I would expect for my campaign, this and that, and then they're going to try to persuade you to vote for them. So, there are a lot of different ways that you can hear persuasive speeches, though. Car salesmen, TV commercials, anything really like that. But now let's look at practical application, how to take both of these and actually use them. So first, again, assessing your audience. If you don't know who you're speaking to, you're not going to know how to address them properly and what's going to stick, what's going to work for them. Be prepared before you go in. Really know what to expect. Then demonstrate credibility. So again, especially with informative. You really want to make sure that you have your facts and data laid out so that people can trust you and they know you're credible. You're going to build credibility also from your job profession, your experience, and things like that, your education. So it's important that if you're presenting to an audience that does not know you, that you might lay those things out beforehand so they know you're credible. And then last, always make sure you're using ethical information. Never lie, never make false documents, because even if you persuade someone in the current time, if that's to come to light, you're going to lose all credibility from then on out. So always be ethical in what you're presenting and make sure it's truthful. So in conclusion, you're going to be constantly using persuasive and informative speeches, whether it be in just a conversation or an actual full-on presentation. So it's good to know about both of them so you can use them successfully and decide which one is best for you. And then they both go together. So you can simply just inform, but you cannot persuade without informing. Those go hand in hand. So it's good to know that. And then lastly, be prepared, know your audience. That's really the biggest thing. You cannot just show up unprepared without knowing who you're going to be talking to. You have to have that outline, know your goal, know your vision. Thank you.